No one in the kingdom of Eldhaven could remember exactly when the wolves stopped crossing the Ashen River. The oldest villagers claimed it happened after the Winter of Broken Stars, when the sky burned green for 3 nights and the forests echoed with cries no hunter dared follow. Others whispered that the wolves had finally accepted defeat after years of bloodshed, retreating forever into the endless Frostwood beyond the northern mountains. Whatever the truth had been, 20 silent years had passed. The river had become more than a border. It had become a promise. On one side lived mankind, raising villages, farms, and castles beneath banners of stone and steel. On the other stretched a kingdom of towering pines, hidden valleys, frozen lakes, and ancient creatures that had long disappeared from human stories. The wolves never crossed. The people never questioned why. Until the morning everything changed. Rain fell without mercy, turning narrow woodland paths into ribbons of dark mud. Cold mist drifted between enormous pine trees whose branches swayed like silent giants above the earth. Every sound seemed softened beneath the steady rhythm of falling water. A young woman moved quietly through the forest, her worn green cloak soaked through long before sunrise. Her name was Elara. She carried no sword. Only a woven basket hanging from one arm and a small iron knife used for cutting roots and herbs. The forest frightened many people. To her, it had always felt like home. Then, a cry shattered the rain. Not the howl of a hunting wolf. Not the scream of a frightened deer. Something deeper. Something filled with pain. Elara froze. Another cry drifted through the trees. Weak. Struggling. As though life itself were slipping away. She took a slow breath before following the sound into the darkest part of Frostwood. She could not have known that every step she took was leading her toward a forgotten promise. Toward an ancient debt. Toward the Alpha King himself. Long before dawn painted the eastern sky with pale silver light, Briar Hollow had already begun to wake. Thin streams of smoke curled from crooked stone chimneys as mothers baked coarse bread for their families. Chickens wandered across muddy yards while old men repaired broken fences scarred by another harsh winter. Children chased each other between tiny cottages built from rough timber darkened by countless seasons of rain. Life in Briar Hollow had never been easy. The village stood at the very edge of the kingdom, where civilization slowly disappeared beneath endless forests and towering mountains. Travelers rarely visited unless forced by weather, and royal messengers only arrived when taxes were due or new hunting laws had to be announced. To most of Eldhaven, Briar Hollow barely existed. Elara preferred it that way. She lived alone inside a modest cottage covered in climbing ivy near the edge of the village. The roof sagged slightly with age, and the garden surrounding it looked wild rather than carefully planned, filled with herbs, lavender, foxglove, thyme, and dozens of healing plants that few others could even name. The cottage had belonged to her grandmother. Every corner still carried traces of the gentle woman who had raised her. Bundles of dried herbs hung above the fireplace. Old wooden shelves overflowed with tiny clay jars filled with roots, berries, oils, and powders gathered across decades. Even now, years after her passing, the house still smelled faintly of pine resin, fresh mint, and the warm honey tea her grandmother had brewed every evening before sunset. As Elara tied her cloak and reached for her basket that morning, her eyes rested briefly on the worn rocking chair beside the cold fireplace. She could almost imagine her grandmother sitting there, smiling softly, always saying the same words. Mercy costs less than hatred, and lasts far longer. Those words had shaped every part of Elara's life. While others feared injured animals, she treated them. When travelers collapsed along lonely roads, she opened her home. If hungry children knocked at her door, they never left empty-handed. Some villagers admired her kindness. Others quietly called her foolish. The kingdom itself had little use for compassion, especially where wolves were concerned. Years earlier, King Aldrich had renewed the crown's hunting decree. Every wolf killed beyond the Ashen River earned silver coins. The larger the wolf, the greater the reward. Their pelts decorated noble halls. Their teeth became jewelry worn by wealthy merchants. Even their bones were sold to wandering alchemists who claimed they held forgotten magic. The hunts had become profitable. Far too profitable. Stories spread through every village describing wolves as monsters that stole children from their beds and slaughtered entire farming settlements beneath the full moon. Few people questioned those stories. Fear was easier than truth. Elara had never seen proof. Only frightened people repeating frightened tales. She crossed the village square quietly, offering warm smiles to familiar faces. Old Miriam waved from her bakery window. Little Rowan proudly held up a carved wooden bird he had finished the previous evening. Even the grumpy blacksmith gave her a respectful nod. She had once saved his daughter after a poisonous snake bit her ankle deep inside the hills. Kindness had a strange way of returning years later. Soon the cottages disappeared behind her. The forest welcomed her with dripping branches and cool shadows. Rain tapped gently against leaves high overhead while tiny streams flowed between carpets of emerald moss. The smell of wet earth filled every breath she took. She knew these woods better than anyone alive. Every winding trail, every hidden spring, every clearing where rare herbs bloomed only after heavy rain. Hours passed peacefully. She gathered white willow bark for fevers, golden moss used to ease aching joints, small blue flowers that only opened beneath cloudy skies. The forest seemed unusually quiet. No birds argued overhead. No squirrels darted through branches. Even the wind had grown strangely still. Elara slowed her pace. Something felt, her heartbeat quickened. She gently pushed aside tangled branches until the forest opened into a narrow clearing surrounded by ancient pine trees. There, lying against the soaked earth, was the largest wolf she had ever seen. Its silver coat shimmered beneath the rain like moonlight trapped inside living fur. One massive foreleg remained clamped inside cruel iron jaws hidden beneath fallen leaves. Blood stained the ground. Fresh. Dark. The wolf struggled once. The trap bit deeper. Its growl shook the clearing before exhaustion forced it still again. Golden eyes locked onto Elara. Wild. Alert. Prepared to fight until its final breath. For a long moment neither moved. Rain streamed from Elara's hood onto trembling hands. She knew exactly what she was looking at. Hunter's trap. Illegal. Far stronger than ordinary snares. Designed not merely to capture, but to cripple. She slowly lowered her basket onto the ground. The wolf's lips curled back. Rows of powerful teeth flashed between heavy breaths. Its muscles tightened despite obvious weakness. One reckless movement would end her life. Yet something stopped her from running. Those eyes. They were filled with pain. Not cruelty. Not hunger. Pain. Quietly she spoke. I'm not here to hurt you. The wolf answered with another warning growl, though weaker than before. Elara removed her cloak and slowly laid it across a nearby rock, making herself appear smaller. Every movement remained calm. Careful. Patient. Her grandmother had once told her frightened creatures listened more to the rhythm of a heartbeat than to spoken words. So she breathed slowly. Steadily. The wolf watched. Minutes passed. Rain continued falling around them. Finally Elara stepped closer. The wolf snapped toward her hand. Not to bite. Only to warn. I know, she whispered gently. You're afraid. She knelt within reach of those enormous jaws. Her fingers shook despite every effort to steady them. The iron trap had nearly crushed the wolf's leg. Rust covered its jagged teeth. Another day. Perhaps another few hours. And infection alone would have claimed its life. She wedged her small knife beneath the trap's locking spring. It barely moved. Too strong. She searched the clearing until finding a fallen oak branch thick enough to use as leverage. The wolf whimpered as the iron shifted. Its entire body trembled. I'm sorry, she breathed. Just a little longer. She pressed harder. Muscles burned. The branch creaked. Suddenly. Crack. The spring released. The trap sprang open. The wolf yanked its bleeding leg free but collapsed immediately onto the wet ground, too exhausted to stand. Elara quickly wrapped strips torn from her own sleeve around the wound before crushing healing leaves between her palms and pressing them gently against torn flesh. The wolf did not resist. It simply watched her. Close enough now, she noticed strange markings hidden beneath the silver fur around its neck. Not scars. A symbol. dark against pale fur. A crescent moon encircling a crown. Unlike anything she had ever seen. When the bandage was finished, Elara slowly leaned back. "You'll have to do the rest yourself." For several silent moments nothing happened. Then, with painful effort, the wolf rose. It placed weight carefully upon its injured leg. It should have fled immediately. Instead, it walked toward her. One slow step. Then another. Until its enormous head stood only inches away. Elara held her breath. The wolf lowered its head. Its cold nose brushed gently across the back of her trembling hand. Not as a beast. As gratitude. Then it reached beneath the thick fur around its neck. A small carved pendant slipped free, falling softly into the grass between them. Before Elara could even react, the silver wolf turned and disappeared into the endless rain. Within seconds, only swaying branches remained. She picked up the pendant. The stone felt strangely warm despite the cold rain. Carved upon its surface was the very same symbol she had seen beneath the wolf's fur. The crowned crescent moon. As her fingers closed around it, a distant howl rolled across Frostwood. One howl. Then another. Then dozens more answered from every direction. Not hunting calls. A warning. Far away, horses suddenly thundered along the forest road. Steel armor clattered. Voices shouted through the rain. Royal riders. Searching. Elara slipped the pendant into her pocket just as the first crimson banners appeared between the trees. The hunt had only just begun. The rain did not stop when the royal riders reached Briar Hollow. It lingered over the valley like a grey curtain, washing dust from the rooftops and turning every footpath into soft earth marked by deep hoofprints. Crimson banners bearing the golden crown snapped in the cold wind as soldiers spread through the village with practiced discipline. Children who had been laughing only moments before disappeared into their homes. Doors closed. Window shutters creaked shut. Even the dogs, usually quick to bark at strangers, tucked their tails beneath them and retreated beneath wagons. Everyone knew the crown never sent armed riders without reason. Elara reached the edge of the village just as two mounted guards crossed in front of her. Their horses were powerful black stallions dressed in polished leather, their breath rising in pale clouds against the damp morning air. One soldier glanced toward the basket hanging from Elara's arm. Fresh herbs. Nothing unusual. His eyes moved to the mud covering her boots. "You've been in the Frostwood." She gave a small nod. "I gather herbs after every rainfall." The guard studied her for another heartbeat before urging his horse forward without another word. Elara continued walking, but the warmth she usually felt when returning home had vanished. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The village square had become crowded. Captain Garrick stood at its center. He was a broad man with iron-grey armor polished until it reflected the gloomy sky above. A thick scar crossed one side of his face, pulling the corner of his mouth into what looked like a permanent sneer. His reputation had reached every corner of Eldhaven. Some called him the kingdom's greatest protector. Others simply lowered their voices whenever his name was spoken. Behind him, several hunters unloaded broken traps, blood-stained chains, and wolf pelts from a wagon, displaying them proudly as though they were trophies earned through honor instead of cruelty. Garrick's voice carried across the square. "A dangerous beast escaped this morning." Silence answered him. It was wounded. Still no one spoke. If anyone has seen unusual tracks, heard strange howls, or offered aid to the creature. His eyes slowly traveled across the gathered villagers. That person will answer directly to the crown. The final words lingered in the cold air. Not a threat shouted in anger. A promise spoken quietly. Elara kept her expression calm. Her pulse did not. Hidden beneath her cloak, the small stone pendant rested inside her pocket. Its warmth had not faded. Life tried to return to normal after the soldiers dispersed, but the village no longer breathed the same way. Neighbors whispered instead of greeting one another. Children were called indoors before sunset. Even the birds seemed strangely absent. Late that evening, Elara lit a single oil lamp inside her cottage. Its gentle glow danced across wooden shelves crowded with herbs collected through every season. She placed the mysterious pendant upon the table. In the flickering light, The carving appeared even more detailed than before. A crescent moon, a crown, and beneath them, 3 tiny stars she had somehow overlooked in the forest. She reached out. The stone was still warm. Almost alive. A sudden howl echoed across the valley. Long, deep, lonely. The pendant glowed for the briefest moment. Elara drew back in surprise. The light disappeared so quickly she almost convinced herself she had imagined it. Almost. The following morning brought unexpected company. An elderly monk arrived in Briar Hollow carrying little more than a walking staff and a weathered satchel patched countless times over. His beard reached nearly to his waist, and years of travel had bent his back, but his blue eyes remained bright with quiet understanding. The villagers welcomed him warmly. Traveling monks were rare. They carried news from distant kingdoms, blessed newborn children, buried the forgotten, and sometimes healed wounds medicine alone could not touch. The old man introduced himself simply as Brother Alden. By afternoon he had already helped repair a broken cartwheel, treated a shepherd's swollen hand, and shared bread with children sitting beneath the old oak tree. When he finally reached Elara's cottage, he smiled before she even opened the door. "I smelled lavender before I found the house," he said softly. "It reminded me of someone." She invited him inside. The kettle soon hung above the fire, filling the room with the comforting scent of herbs and honey. For a while they spoke only of simple things. The changing weather, harvests, road conditions. Then Brother Alden's eyes settled upon the pendant lying carelessly beside a bundle of dried mint. His smile disappeared. The room became strangely quiet. "Where?" His voice had grown barely louder than a whisper. "Did you find this?" Elara hesitated. Then she told him everything. The forest. The trap. The wounded wolf. The golden eyes. The old monk listened without interruption. When she finished, he closed his own eyes for several long moments. "It has begun." She frowned. "What has?" He gently picked up the pendant. His fingers trembled. "This symbol has not been seen openly for nearly 50 years. You know what it means?" He nodded slowly. It belonged to the Wolf Covenant. The name meant nothing to Elara. Brother Alden noticed. "I suppose no one teaches children that story anymore." He stared into the dancing fire. Long ago, before hatred ruled these lands, humans and wolves protected one another. Elara blinked. Wolves protected people. Not ordinary wolves. His voice remained calm. The guardians. He turned the pendant over carefully. They were larger, wiser, and bound by an oath to the Alpha Kings. The Alpha Kings. The rulers beyond Frostwood. Elara looked at him in disbelief. "I thought they were legends." "So did most people." Brother Alden sighed. "Legends are often history that frightened men tried to erase." Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. The old monk continued. "The covenant lasted generations. Villages flourished. Forests remained untouched. Rivers were shared. Hunters became guardians rather than killers." "What happened?" His expression darkened. "Betrayal." Only one word. Yet it carried centuries of sorrow. Someone wanted power. Someone convinced kings that wolves planned to destroy humanity. So the alliance ended. Brother Alden nodded. Blood answered fear. And fear answered blood. The truth disappeared beneath both. Silence settled over the room once again. Elara looked down at the pendant. "If everything you say is true." She swallowed. "Why would that wolf leave this with me?" The old monk smiled sadly. "Because gifts like this are never given by accident." That evening the forest changed. Not dramatically. Not in ways most people would notice. But Elara did. The rabbits grazing near her garden vanished before sunset. Birdsong ended earlier than usual. Even the wind carried unfamiliar scents drifting down from the mountains. Something was moving through Frostwood. Not one creature. Many. After darkness settled across the valley, she stepped outside carrying a lantern. Clouds drifted apart just enough for moonlight to spill across the fields. Everything seemed peaceful. Then she noticed them. Footprints. Fresh. Large. One pair circled her cottage. Another crossed near the herb garden. A third disappeared toward the old well. Wolves. Several of them. Yet nothing had been disturbed. The chickens remained alive. The goats slept peacefully inside their pens. Not a single animal had been harmed. Elara followed the tracks to the edge of the trees. There, standing between silver shafts of moonlight, was the great silver wolf. Its injured leg remained wrapped in the cloth she had tied around it. The bandage was stained but intact. The wolf watched her silently. It neither approached nor retreated. Behind it, shapes emerged. 1, 3, 5. Nearly a dozen wolves. The silver wolf slowly lowered its head. Every other wolf followed. An entire pack bowed toward the young healer standing alone beneath the stars. Elara's breath caught in her throat. Before she could take another step, every wolf lifted its head at once. Their ears turned toward the northern mountains. Low growls rolled through the trees. The silver wolf's eyes sharpened. Without warning, the entire pack disappeared into the forest as silently as drifting fog. Only moments later, the distant sound of hunting horns echoed across the valley. Long, cold, relentless. From the hill overlooking Briar Hollow, Captain Garrick lowered his spyglass. A cruel smile slowly spread across his scarred face. "So," he murmured, "the wolves have chosen her." His horse turned toward the forest. Behind him, nearly 200 armed hunters began preparing for the largest wolf hunt Eldhaven had seen in a generation. And somewhere deep within Frostwood, something ancient had awakened. Morning arrived beneath a sky of pale silver, but no warmth came with it. A thin blanket of mist drifted across Briar Hollow, clinging to the rooftops and weaving silently between the narrow lanes. Smoke rose from chimneys as it always had, yet the village no longer carried the comforting rhythm Elara had known since childhood. Doors opened only a crack before being quickly shut again. Conversations ended whenever unfamiliar footsteps approached. Every glance toward the northern forest lingered a little too long. The hunting horns from the previous night had left something behind. Not just fear. Expectation. Elara stood outside her cottage, filling a wooden bucket from the old stone well. The water rippled gently, reflecting the grey clouds above, but another reflection caught her attention. Golden eyes. She turned sharply. No one. Only swaying grass and the whisper of wind through birch trees. Still. She smiled. Somewhere nearby, the silver wolf was watching. She no longer found the thought frightening. It felt strangely comforting. Far beyond the Ashen River, where no ordinary villager had walked for generations, Frostwood revealed its true heart. Towering pines stretched toward the heavens like pillars holding up the sky itself. Crystal streams flowed beneath sheets of ice that never fully melted. Massive cliffs surrounded hidden valleys where sunlight touched the earth only for a few hours each day. There, hidden among ancient stone arches carved by forgotten hands, stood a kingdom no human map remembered. Not built with towering walls or glittering castles. Built with the forest itself. Enormous trees had grown together over centuries, their roots embracing halls of smooth stone, their branches sheltering homes woven from wood, moss, and silver vines. Wolves moved freely beside people. Children laughed while white foxes chased falling leaves. Old women carved symbols into oak doors while ravens perched patiently beside them. It was a kingdom that breathed with nature rather than ruling over it. At its center stood a broad circle of weathered stone. And there, a man knelt beside the wounded silver wolf. His cloak was as dark as the midnight sky. Silver embroidery traced the sleeves like moonlight flowing across still water. Long black hair rested upon powerful shoulders, while calm grey eyes studied the injured leg wrapped in unfamiliar cloth. The wolf gently lowered its head. The man carefully untied the bandage. He examined the crushed flesh beneath. Healing herbs. Applied with surprising skill. His fingers brushed lightly across the torn cloth. Not expensive linen. Simple homespun fabric. Someone had sacrificed part of their own clothing to save another life. He closed his hand around the cloth. "So." His voice was deep but quiet. She chose mercy. The old healer standing beside him smiled, just as her grandfather once did. The man's eyes lifted. You are certain? I have never been more certain. The old healer handed him a worn leather scroll. Its edges had yellowed with age. The wax seal crumbled as it opened. Inside rested names written decades earlier. The man's gaze stopped upon one. Edmund Ashvale. Below it, a faded sentence. He gave his own freedom so the Alpha might live. The Alpha King slowly closed the scroll. So the debt survives. It does. And the granddaughter now walks the same path. The old healer looked toward the distant southern mountains. History has begun repeating itself. The Alpha King remained silent for a long while. Finally he whispered, "Then this time, we will not fail her." Unaware of the storm gathering around her, Elara continued caring for those who needed her. A farmer arrived carrying his young son, whose arm had been badly burned while tending the village kill. An elderly widow struggled with a fever that had refused to break. A shepherd limped through her doorway after twisting his ankle among rocky hillsides. Elara treated each one with the same gentle patience her grandmother had taught her. She asked for no payment, only that they care for one another when they could. By evening, fresh bread, eggs, apples, and jars of honey had quietly appeared outside her cottage. The village had little wealth, but gratitude often arrived in humble forms. As the last visitor departed, Brother Alden returned. His face looked more troubled than before. They're expanding the hunt. Elara looked up from grinding dried herbs. How many? More than I hoped. He removed his soaked cloak. I counted nearly 200 hunters before sunset. Her hands stopped moving. 200. And soldiers besides. The old monk lowered himself onto a wooden chair. They're not searching for one wolf anymore. They're preparing for war. Captain Garrick watched the preparations from a rocky overlook above the forest. Rows of tents stretched across the valley below. Blacksmiths hammered fresh iron traps into shape. Archers inspected bundles of feathered arrows. Dogs strained against heavy chains, barking toward the trees. Everywhere men sharpened blades. Not because wolves had attacked. Because someone had convinced them wolves soon would. Garrick welcomed fear. Fear made people obedient. One of his lieutenants approached. "We found several old shrines inside the forest. Destroy them. The men say they carry strange markings." I said destroy them. The lieutenant hesitated. And the villages? Garrick looked toward Briar Hollow. His scar twisted as he smiled. If anyone remembers the old alliance. His voice became almost gentle. They won't remember it for long. That night, strange dreams came to Elara. She stood beside the Ashen River beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The water reflected 2 moons instead of one. Across the river waited hundreds of wolves. Not growling. Not hunting. Watching. Among them stood a tall man wrapped in silver and black. His face remained hidden beneath shadow. Yet she somehow knew his eyes. Grey. Calm. Ancient. He extended one hand toward her. Before she could move, the river turned red. The stars vanished. Flames rose from the forest. She woke with a sharp breath. The fire had nearly burned out. Cold moonlight spilled through the cottage window. Outside, a single howl echoed through the darkness. Not mournful. Warning. Before dawn fully arrived, pounding erupted against her front door. Elara opened it to find little Rowan standing barefoot in the rain. The carved wooden bird she always admired still clutched tightly in one hand. His cheeks were streaked with tears. "They took my father." Her heart tightened. What happened? The soldiers. He struggled to breathe. They said he was helping wolves. Elara grabbed her cloak without another question. The village square had become chaos. Several farmers knelt with their hands tied. Wagons filled with hunting equipment blocked the main road. Captain Garrick stood before the gathered villagers. "No one leaves Briar Hollow." His voice carried effortlessly. "No one enters Frostwood." A frightened woman stepped forward. My husband has done nothing wrong. Garrick didn't even look at her. He knows someone who has. His gaze slowly settled upon Elara. For only a heartbeat. But it was enough. He suspected her. She felt it as clearly as winter wind. That afternoon, the first smoke appeared beyond the northern hills. Thin at first. Then darker. Thicker. Brother Alden climbed the church bell tower for a better view. His face turned pale. They're burning the outer forest. The word spread through the village faster than fire itself. Elara ran toward the hill overlooking Frostwood. Far away, beyond endless pines, black smoke climbed into the sky. Birds burst upward in frightened clouds. Deer raced across open fields. Even from that distance she could hear faint echoes. Not thunder. Trees falling. The hunt had begun. Not for food. Not for protection. For destruction. She felt the pendant grow warm beneath her cloak. Warmer than ever before. Then, a wolf appeared beside her. Not the silver guardian. A young grey wolf, its chest heaving from exhaustion. It looked directly into her eyes. Turned. Looked back again. Waiting. As if asking her to follow. Brother Alden reached the hill a moment later. His expression became solemn. It has come. Elara looked from the wolf. To the burning forest. To the frightened villagers gathering below. If I leave, they may survive. If you stay. He lowered his eyes. The wolves will not. Behind them, hunting horns echoed once more. This time they sounded much closer. Much too close. Elara tightened her cloak around herself. The grey wolf took another step into the forest before pausing once again. She realized, with a quiet certainty that settled deep within her heart. It had not come to ask. It had come to guide. And somewhere beyond the smoke and fire, the Alpha King was waiting. The grey wolf slipped between the towering pines without making a sound. For a heartbeat, Elara remained frozen at the edge of the forest. Behind her lay Briar Hollow, the only home she had ever known. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimneys, children clung to frightened mothers, and old men stood gripping wooden staffs they knew would never stop trained soldiers. Ahead stretched Frostwood. A place every child had been taught to fear. The grey wolf looked back one last time. Its amber eyes held neither urgency nor command. Only trust. Brother Alden stepped beside Elara, resting a weathered hand gently on her shoulder. There are moments, he said softly, when a single choice carries the weight of generations. She swallowed. What if I make the wrong one? The old monk smiled with quiet sadness. The wrong choice is usually the easiest one. The word settled deep inside her. Without another glance behind, Elara stepped beneath the ancient pines. The forest welcomed her with silence. Only a few hundred steps separated the woodland from the village, yet it felt as though she had crossed into another world. The air grew cooler. The scent of smoke disappeared beneath the fresh fragrance of pine needles, damp earth, and wild mint crushed beneath her boots. Sunlight filtered through branches in long silver ribbons that danced across moss-covered stones. The grey wolf never hurried. It walked steadily ahead, stopping whenever Elara fell behind, making certain she remained close. As they climbed higher into the mountains, signs of the hunt appeared everywhere. A shattered bird's nest lay beneath a broken branch. Fresh axe marks scarred the trunks of ancient trees. One clearing had been blackened by fire, leaving only smoking stumps where towering pines had stood for centuries. Elara knelt beside the scorched ground. Tiny deer tracks ended abruptly near a patch of dried blood. She closed her eyes. Even the forest felt wounded. Hours passed before another sound reached them. Not horns. Not soldiers. Crying. Soft at first. Then louder. The grey wolf changed direction immediately. They hurried downhill until the trees opened into a narrow ravine where an overturned wagon rested against a fallen oak. Its wheels had splintered after sliding down the rocky slope. A frightened woman struggled to lift the heavy cart while two small children clung to each other beneath it. Nearby, an old horse lay trapped beneath broken wood, its breathing ragged and weak. The mother looked up as Elara approached. Relief flooded her tear-filled eyes. Cloak. The grateful woman stared at the wolf. It helped us. She could barely believe what she had seen. Elara smiled gently. Perhaps the old stories were never the true ones. The woman watched the grey wolf disappear into the trees. For the first time in many years, she did not look afraid. As evening settled over Frostwood, the forest slowly awakened. Owls glided silently between branches. Foxes emerged from hidden dens. A family of red squirrels darted across moss-covered logs, gathering the last seeds before nightfall. The deeper Elara traveled, the more alive the forest became. Animals did not flee from her. They simply watched. A young fawn stepped from behind a fern, studying her with wide, curious eyes before quietly returning to its mother. Ravens circled high above, calling softly to one another. Even the wind seemed different here. Gentler, as though carrying whispers from another age. The grey wolf finally stopped beside a cliff hidden behind hanging vines. At first, Elara saw only solid stone. Then the wolf pressed its nose against a weathered rock. With a low rumble, part of the cliff slowly shifted inward. A hidden passage. Cold air drifted from within, carrying the scent of old stone and flowing water. Elara hesitated only a moment before following. The tunnel widened into an enormous cavern illuminated by shafts of golden sunlight pouring through cracks high above. She stopped walking. Her breath caught. An underground valley stretched before her. Crystal streams wound through carpets of emerald grass. Ancient trees grew beneath the open ceiling where the mountain had long ago split apart. Stone bridges crossed sparkling pools filled with silver fish. Dozens. No. Hundreds of wolves moved peacefully throughout the valley. Some rested beside waterfalls. Others played with their cubs beneath flowering trees. None showed even the smallest sign of aggression. Several wolves looked toward Elara. One by one. They lowered their heads. Not in fear. In welcome. Tears stung her eyes. Everything she had been taught about wolves had been built upon lies. A gentle voice echoed through the valley. You finally came. Elara turned. An elderly man stood beneath a flowering ash tree. His long white hair rested against simple brown robes, while a carved wooden staff supported his slow steps. Time had bent his body but not his spirit. His clear green eyes carried the quiet wisdom of someone who had witnessed both great joy and terrible sorrow. You know me. He smiled. I have been waiting longer than you can imagine. The grey wolf walked to his side. The old man rested one hand upon its head. My name is Cedric. I once served the royal court of Eldhaven. Elara frowned. You served the king. Long before Garrick became commander. His smile faded. I also served the Wolf Covenant. She stepped closer. I thought it was gone. It nearly was. Cedric slowly led her toward weathered stone ruins hidden among flowering vines. Broken pillars surrounded a broad circular platform carved with the same crowned crescent moon she had seen upon the pendant. Wildflowers now grew through cracks in the ancient stone. The Covenant was born here. His fingers brushed gently across the carvings. Every spring, humans crossed the Ashen River carrying gifts. Wolves welcomed them. They planted trees together. They settled disputes together. They celebrated life together. Elara imagined laughter filling the valley, children running beside wolf cubs, songs echoing beneath moonlight. It felt impossible, yet standing within those ruins, it also felt true. What destroyed it? Cedric's expression darkened. Greed. He pointed toward a weathered carving nearly hidden beneath moss. It showed a man placing coins into another man's hands. Garrick's ancestors were merchants. They discovered enchanted wolf pelts could be sold for fortunes beyond imagination. So they created fear. They spread stories. They paid storytellers. They bribed nobles. They convinced kings that wolves planned rebellion. Every hunt made them richer. Every lie buried the truth deeper. Elara lowered her eyes. So many died. For nothing. Cedric nodded silently. A deep howl rolled across the valley. Every wolf lifted its head. The silver guardian emerged from the trees, its injured leg already healing. It walked toward Elara before stepping aside. Someone else approached. The valley itself seemed to grow still. Birds stopped singing. Leaves no longer rustled. Even the flowing streams sounded quieter. A tall man stepped from the shadows. His dark cloak moved gently behind him. Silver embroidery shimmered like moonlight along its edges. His face was calm, strong, and marked not by arrogance but by quiet responsibility. Grey eyes met Elara's. They were the same eyes she had seen in her dream. The same calm strength. The same endless sadness. He stopped several steps away. Neither spoke. The silver wolf moved to his side. The man rested one hand upon its broad shoulders. "You saved my oldest companion." His voice was low and steady. "He has stood beside me for 17 winters." Elara finally found her own voice. "You are the Alpha King." He inclined his head. "My name is Kalen." She had expected a monster. A warlord. A creature filled with fury. Instead she found a ruler carrying invisible burdens far heavier than any crown. Kalen looked toward the valley below. "For many years, I searched for a way to repay a debt my family never forgot." His eyes returned to hers. "Your grandfather gave his freedom to save my father. He died carrying the shame of a crime he never committed. My bloodline has owed yours ever since." Elara's breath caught. "My grandfather. He wasn't a traitor." Kalen slowly shook his head. "He was the bravest man either kingdom ever knew." Before another word could be spoken, a wolf burst into the valley at full speed. Its sides heaved violently. Fresh blood stained its white fur. It collapsed before the Alpha King. Cedric knelt immediately. Arrow wound. The injured wolf struggled to breathe. With its last strength, it let out a broken howl. Kalen's face hardened. What happened? Cedric listened carefully to the wolf's fading movements before looking up. "They've found the outer valley." Silence fell. One sentence. Enough to freeze every heart. "They've taken the cubs." Several mother wolves cried out together, their mournful voices echoing across the hidden sanctuary. Another scout arrived only moments later. This one carried an even darker message. Captain Garrick had captured several children from nearby villages as well. His demand was simple. Before sunrise, Elara must surrender herself. Or innocent villagers, and the wolf cubs, would die together. The peaceful valley that had survived in secret for generations suddenly felt very small. Outside its hidden walls, war had arrived. The hidden valley did not sleep that night. Moonlight poured through the opening in the mountain above, painting the ancient sanctuary in silver and blue. Wolves moved quietly between the stone ruins, their paws barely disturbing the soft grass. Mothers searched desperately among the gathering pack, their restless eyes fixed on every path leading toward the northern cliffs, hoping against hope that their missing cubs would somehow return on their own. They did not. The silence carried a weight no words could lift. Elara stood beside the crystal stream where the water reflected the trembling stars overhead. The pendant rested in her palm, its warmth pulsing gently against her skin. She stared into the flowing water until another reflection appeared beside her. Kalen. The Alpha King stood a respectful distance away, his hands resting loosely behind his back. His expression remained calm, yet the shadows beneath his eyes revealed a night without rest. For several moments, neither spoke. The stream whispered between them. Finally, Kalen broke the silence. "You are thinking of surrender." It was not a question. Elara lowered her eyes. "They have children. So do we." She looked toward the mothers gathered beneath the ash trees. Tiny whimpers drifted through the valley as frightened wolf pups searched for siblings who were no longer there. Kalen stepped beside the stream. Garrick has studied fear his entire life. His voice remained steady. He believes kindness always bends before cruelty. Elara looked toward him. And if he's right? A faint smile touched the Alpha King's face. "My father once told me something." He watched the current carry fallen leaves downstream. Cruel men mistake compassion for weakness because they have never possessed it themselves. His gaze settled on her. You proved that the day you freed my guardian." The words warmed her heart, yet they changed nothing. Children were still prisoners. Wolf cubs were still trapped. And every hour brought sunrise closer. Elsewhere, beneath rows of black military tents, Captain Garrick prepared for the dawn. His camp spread across a wide meadow overlooking the Ashen River. Bonfires burned through the night while soldiers sharpened blades and repaired broken armor. Heavy iron cages stood in the center of the camp. Inside one huddled 3 frightened village children wrapped in worn blankets. Beside them, in a second cage, 4 young wolf cubs pressed tightly together, their frightened cries growing weaker with every passing hour. The cubs did not snarl. They did not claw at the bars. They simply trembled. One tiny white cub rested against the cold iron door, staring toward the dark forest beyond. As though waiting, Garrick noticed. He laughed quietly. "They're loyal." One hunter standing nearby nodded. "They'll break soon enough." "No," Garrick smiled. "They won't." He reached through the bars and grabbed the frightened cub by the scruff of its neck. It whimpered softly but did not bite. He held it high enough for everyone to see. "This," he declared, "is why wolves must disappear." He dropped the cub roughly back into the cage. "They make people sentimental." Several younger soldiers looked away. Even among Garrick's own men, the sight left an uneasy feeling. He noticed. His eyes narrowed. Pity has no place in victory. No one answered. Back within the hidden valley, Cedric spread an ancient map across a broad stone table worn smooth by centuries of use. Lines carved into the faded parchment showed forgotten mountain paths, hidden rivers, and old covenant roads long erased from human memory. Around him gathered Kaelin, Brother Alden, several wolf guardians, and Elara. "The camp is here." Cedric pointed toward the river crossing. Nearly 200 soldiers. Archers on the ridge. Traps surrounding every approach. Brother Alden sighed. A direct attack would become a massacre. Kaelin nodded. "Exactly what Garrick wants." Silence followed. Then Elara quietly stepped forward. "What if we give him what he expects?" Every eye turned toward her. "He wants me." She took a slow breath. "So let him believe he has won." Cedric frowned. "Child." "No." Her voice remained calm. "He expects warriors. He expects revenge. He expects wolves to attack." She looked toward Kaelin. "What he will never expect is trust." The only the pendant hanging openly around her neck. Behind her, hidden among towering pines, hundreds of wolves watched in complete silence. None followed. Not yet. Kaelin stood beneath the oldest ash tree. He did not try to stop her. Instead, he placed one hand over his heart. It was the ancient salute of the Wolf Covenant. A promise. Not goodbye. Elara answered with the same gesture before disappearing into the morning mist. Captain Garrick's camp stirred awake beneath a cold grey dawn. Smoke curled upward from breakfast fires. Armor clinked. Horses stamped impatiently. A lookout standing upon the southern ridge suddenly shouted, "Someone approaches." Soldiers rushed toward the entrance. Bows were raised. Spears lowered. Yet confusion quickly spread through the ranks. Only one figure walked along the muddy road. One woman. Alone. Elara stopped several paces before the guards. "I've come willingly." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Within moments, Garrick emerged from his command tent. His scarred face broke into a satisfied smile. "So, you finally understand." Elara met his eyes steadily. "Release them." He laughed. "You still believe you can bargain? You already have me. I have many things." He slowly circled around her. "But today, I intend to have much more." By midday, nearly the entire population of Briar Hollow had been forced into the meadow before Garrick's camp. Men, women, children, even the elderly. They stood surrounded by armed soldiers while rumors spread through the frightened crowd like wildfire. Elara stood with her hands bound. The wolf cubs remained inside their cage. Nearby, the village children clung tightly together. Brother Alden stood among the prisoners, silently praying. Captain Garrick climbed onto a wooden platform built hastily beside the largest bonfire. His voice carried across the valley. For years, our kingdom has suffered because some among us forgot who the enemy truly is. He pointed toward Elara. This woman betrayed mankind. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She aided wolves. She entered forbidden lands. She conspired against the crown. Several villagers lowered their heads. Others looked uncertain. Old Miriam stepped forward despite trembling legs. She saved my grandson. A soldier shoved her backward. Another farmer raised his voice. She healed my wife. The crowd began whispering. One after another. Small acts of kindness resurfaced. The baker remembered how Elara had cared for his sick daughter. The shepherd remembered the winter she shared her last loaf of bread. The blacksmith remembered the poison she drew from his child's wound. Garrick frowned. Fear was slipping. He slammed the butt of his sword against the platform. Enough. The meadow fell quiet once more. If compassion has blinded you, perhaps truth will restore your sight. He ordered the wolf cubs dragged forward. Tiny frightened cries filled the air. Even hardened soldiers looked uncomfortable. Garrick drew his sword. Its polished blade caught the afternoon sunlight. He raised it high above the nearest cub. Watch carefully. Today, mercy dies. The little white cub closed its eyes. Its body trembled violently. A child in the crowd began crying. Elara struggled against her bindings. No. At that exact moment, a deep howl rolled across the mountains. Not one. Hundreds. The sound shook the valley itself. Every soldier turned instinctively toward the forest. The trees remained still. Then another howl answered. Closer. Stronger. The wind shifted. Leaves spiraled into the air. And from the shadows beneath the towering pines, a single figure stepped forward. Tall. Calm. Wrapped in a black cloak embroidered with silver. The great silver guardian walked silently at his side. Behind them, hundreds of wolves emerged without a sound. Not charging. Not growling. Simply walking. An army held back by perfect discipline. The meadow fell into stunned silence. Kalen stopped within sight of every soldier, every villager, and every frightened child. His grey eyes never left Garrick. When he finally spoke, his voice carried effortlessly across the valley. You have ruled through lies long enough. Old parchment proves nothing. Kalen nodded. Then perhaps this will. From the leather case he withdrew a second bundle. This one contained ledgers. Names. Payments. Royal correspondence. Letters bearing the seals of Garrick's own ancestors. Brother Alden accepted the documents with shaking hands. He read silently for several moments. His expression slowly crumbled. Tears filled his tired eyes. He raised the pages for everyone to see. Payments. His voice broke. They paid noblemen to spread lies. He turned another page. They ordered illegal hunts. Another. They sold enchanted pelts across the western kingdoms. Gasps echoed through the crowd. A blacksmith stepped forward. My grandfather disappeared during one of those hunts. A widow clutched her chest. My father. He never came home. One memory awakened another. Then another. Pieces of forgotten history began fitting together like broken glass finally restored. Garrick's voice thundered above them. Lies. He pointed furiously toward Kalen. He has enchanted you. He comes wearing a friendly face because he fears our strength. Several soldiers shifted uneasily. Others no longer looked certain. One young archer slowly lowered his bow. Another removed his helmet altogether. The fear Garrick had carefully built across decades was beginning to crack. He saw it. And panic replaced confidence. If fear no longer controls them, he thought, then force will. Without warning, Garrick snatched a torch from the nearest brazier and hurled it toward the cage holding the wolf cubs. The dry straw beneath it burst into flames. The frightened cubs cried out together. At the very same moment, another burning torch flew toward the cage imprisoning the village children. Chaos exploded across the meadow. Mothers screamed. Soldiers shouted conflicting orders. Horses reared in terror. Smoke billowed into the air. Elara did not hesitate. Ignoring the ropes binding her wrists, she threw herself toward the nearest burning cage. The rough cords tore painfully against her skin as she slammed against the iron bars. Inside, little Rowan reached trembling fingers toward her. Elara! Heat blasted against her face. Flames climbed higher. She searched desperately for the latch. It had been locked from the outside. A heavy iron chain wrapped tightly around the door. Nearby, the wolf cubs cried louder as smoke surrounded them. Without thinking, Elara grabbed a burning piece of timber with her bare hands. Pain shot through her fingers. She ignored it. Using every ounce of strength she possessed, she drove the timber beneath the chain. The heated metal groaned. It refused to break. Her palms blistered. Smoke stung her eyes until tears streamed down her face. Still she pushed. Come on. The chain snapped. The cage door burst open. The children stumbled into her arms, coughing violently. Run! They needed no second invitation. Rowan grabbed the younger children by their hands and fled toward the frightened villagers. Before Elara could even catch her breath, another desperate cry reached her. The wolf cubs. Their cage was now completely surrounded by flames. She turned without hesitation. Someone shouted for her to stop. She never looked back. The heat became almost unbearable. Her cloak caught fire along one edge. She ripped it away and dropped it into the dirt. Through the smoke she reached the cage. One tiny white cub had collapsed. Its brothers and sisters huddled protectively around it. The lock glowed red from the fire. Impossible to touch. Elara wrapped both hands inside the remains of her scorched sleeves. Ignoring the pain, she gripped the burning latch. The smell of scorched cloth filled the air. For one terrible second. Nothing happened. Then the metal shifted. The lock fell free. The door swung open. The cubs rushed into her arms. One after another they leaped clear of the flames. The smallest white cub stumbled. Before it could fall, Elara scooped it gently against her chest. The frightened little creature buried its nose beneath her chin. Safe. At last. A roar suddenly echoed behind her. Garrick charged through the smoke with sword raised high. If I lose everything, he shouted. You lose everything too. His blade flashed toward Elara. She had no time to move. Before the sword could fall, a silver blur crashed into Garrick with the force of a falling tree. The great guardian wolf. Its massive body hurled Garrick several yards across the muddy ground. The sword spun from his grasp. The commander scrambled back to his feet with wild eyes. You beasts! He reached for a crossbow lying beside a fallen soldier. He loaded a bolt with trembling hands. Not toward Kaelin. Toward Elara. Kaelin saw it. Time seemed to slow. Without a single thought for his own safety, the Alpha King threw himself between them. He looked around wildly. You fools! They'll destroy us. No one moved. Old Miriam walked forward first. The baker beside her. The blacksmith. The shepherd. Families from every corner of Briar Hollow slowly crossed the meadow. Not toward Garrick. Toward Elara. Toward the wolves. Toward hope. The white cub slipped from Elara's arms and padded carefully toward one frightened little girl standing beside her mother. Instead of running away, the child knelt. The cub gently touched its nose against her tiny hand. A smile broke across the little girl's face. The crowd watched. Years of fear dissolved inside one quiet moment. Captain Garrick looked around in disbelief. Everything he had built, every lie, every victory won through terror, had vanished. Not because someone conquered him. Because the truth had finally been seen. Royal guards who had once obeyed him stepped forward. Their captain removed Garrick's sword belt. Another placed heavy iron shackles around his wrists. The same kind he had once used on countless innocent people. Garrick struggled. No one helped him. He was led away without another word. Justice did not shout. It simply arrived. The weeks that followed transformed Eldhaven in ways no one had believed possible. The fires were extinguished. Illegal traps disappeared from the forests. Stone markers were raised along the Ashen River, honoring every life lost during the years of betrayal. The ancient scrolls were copied and placed inside every royal library so the truth could never again be buried beneath lies. For the first time in 20 years, the wolves crossed the Ashen River openly. Not as conquerors. As friends. Villagers stood waiting along the banks carrying baskets of bread, fresh berries, smoked fish, and wildflowers. Wolf cubs chased laughing children through the tall summer grass. Old songs, forgotten for generations, filled the evening air once more. The covenant had returned. Not through treaties. Through trust. King Aldric publicly restored the honor stolen from Elara's grandfather. His name was carved into white stone beside the royal hall. Below it were simple words. He chose mercy when others chose fear. Elara was offered gold. Land. A noble title. She quietly refused them all. Instead, she rebuilt her grandmother's small cottage at the edge of Briar Hollow. Its herb garden bloomed brighter than ever. Its door remained open from sunrise until long after sunset. Travelers arrived with tired feet. Children came carrying injured birds. Farmers brought exhausted horses. No one was turned away. Some evenings, villagers would smile as several wolves rested peacefully beneath the old oak outside her home, their ears twitching lazily while children played nearby. No one found it strange anymore. One golden autumn morning, months after peace had returned, Elara stepped outside carrying a basket of freshly gathered herbs. Mist drifted softly across the fields. The first rays of sunlight painted the Ashen River in shimmering gold. A familiar white cub waited patiently beside her doorstep. It had grown larger now, though it still looked at her with the same trusting eyes. She laughed quietly as it nudged her hand. "You've decided this is your home now." The cub wagged its tail before curling comfortably beside the garden fence. Across the meadow, near the edge of Frostwood, a lone figure watched beneath the ancient pines. Kalen. His wounded shoulder had healed, though a faint scar remained. The Silver Guardian stood faithfully beside him. Neither crossed the field. Neither needed to. Their eyes met across the quiet distance. No words were spoken. None were necessary. Some debts could never be measured in gold. Some promises could never be written on parchment. One act of compassion. One stranger kneeling beside a wounded wolf in the rain. Had healed 2 kingdoms. The morning breeze carried the sound of distant howls across the valley. This time, they no longer sounded like warnings. They sounded like home. The end.